if President Trump is telling us that air traffic control towers are staffed with unqualified controllers, these DEI hires who never should have been brought on, then it's not safe to fly commercially, is it?
The president was asked and answered this yesterday, and he believes that it is still indeed safe, and Americans should feel safe traveling our skies. With that said, two things can be true at the same time, and we certainly have seen the deterioration of federal hiring standards at the Federal Aviation Administration, and the president wants to increase those standards. He wants pilots in this country who have the great responsibility of flying American citizens by the tens of millions every single day to be chosen for that position based on their merit and their skills. And so the administration will continue to prioritize this.
Here's how you know this is a disaster for the White House. So a plane crashes, and Trump decides to blame this nebulous framework of DEI, all because he wanted to diffuse responsibility away from himself. But the problem is that by pretending that DEI is the issue here, well, that's not something you can just fix. That's some vague, broad structure. It's like the war on terror. You can't just stop it in a day. And so now, because again, Trump wanted to blame DEI for his own problems, the unintended consequences of that is that now the White House inadvertently told Americans that it's not safe to fly. After all, it's not like this amorphous DEI thing can be fixed in one fell swoop, meaning the press secretary had to cover for her lying boss once and now has to lie more to clean up for the first lie. I would say that honesty is a better strategy, but I think we know by now that Donald Trump isn't interested in that strategy. Now, at the risk of Donald Trump flooding the zone with more DEI bullshit, here's the reality. On January 20th, Trump and Elon Musk pushed out the FAA administrator. They never bothered naming a replacement. Also on January 20th, Trump implemented a federal hiring freeze, which includes air traffic controllers. That's important because we would eventually come to find out that the crash involved one air traffic controller doing the job that would normally require two people. On January 21st, Trump disbanded the Aviation Security Advisory Committee and fired the TSA director. On January 22nd, Trump's White House posted that President Donald J. Trump ends DEI madness and restores excellence and safety within the Federal Aviation Administration. And then, 1 week later, the first commercial plane crash occurred in 16 years. So look, none of this is to say that Donald Trump caused the crash, but the reality is that Trump coming out and saying stuff like DEI is why the plane crashed is ludicrous because A, if Obama or Biden implemented DEI, then why have we had zero crashes in the last decade and a half? And B, Trump claimed he ended it, meaning DEI was no longer on the table. It wasn't an issue. Again, take a look at this addition to his website. President Donald J. Trump ends DEI madness and restores excellence and safety within the Federal Aviation Administration. So that's it. No more DEI. Everything that happened in aviation moving forward from that moment is Trump's own. He owns it now. He can't blame the evil, woke, Marxist Democrats because they're not in power. He ended their programs. Republicans are in charge. They are in control. They run the House and the Senate and the White House. How do you blame the people that you've replaced and whose policies you've ended? Seriously, let me know. I'm all ears. Granted, will logic stop Trump? Of course not. Here he is literally signing an executive order blaming DEI.
Sir, thank you.
Second for your signature, we have a presidential memorandum titled Immediate Assessment of Aviation Safety. In light of the damage done to aviation safety by the Biden administration's DEI and woke policies, what this presidential memorandum orders is for your Secretary of Transportation and FAA administrator, in this case acting FAA administrator, to basically ensure that we are actively undoing all of that damage, that we are assessing how much damage was done, and that we're ensuring that people hired within the FAA, in keeping with your memorandum of January 21st, are only the most outstanding, capable people for the jobs that they're being hired into.
In other words, competence.
Yes, sir. Elevating competence over everything.
Let me ask you a question. If Trump already pushed out the FAA administrator, already implemented a hiring freeze, already disbanded the Aviation Security Advisory Committee, already fired the TSA administrator, already restored excellence and safety within the Federal Aviation Administration, then what is an executive order going to do? Is that some magic key that will officially proclaim the end of DEI? Was that the last ingredient that we were waiting for? Nothing really counted until this nebulous executive order was put into effect? Let me ask any Trump supporters out there, do you realize that he's taking you for fools? Do you realize that the executive order he just signed here is a way of him pretending that he's just solved a problem that in reality didn't even exist until he created it by firing a bunch of officials who had up to that point kept the skies safe? To Trump supporters out there, he clearly doesn't have any respect for you. Have it for yourself. On the executive order front, Al Franken responded perfectly. He wrote, "This is disgraceful. Though it may not have stopped the crash, Trump is distracting us from the fact that he did not appoint a new FAA administrator until today. The former FAA administrator was pressured to step down when Trump took office because Elon Musk didn't want him to keep going after SpaceX. The reality is that bad governance has consequences, and when you have a government in place that is more focused on enriching themselves and engaging in crony capitalism than helping regular Americans, that tends to result in tragedies like this one. So Trump can diffuse responsibility all he wants, but it's not going to change the reality that he's in charge and he's accountable for his own actions in office." Here's Senator Tim Kaine driving that point home.
I think the president was race baiting to take attention away from this. He let Elon Musk force the resignation of the FAA administrator at the beginning of the administration. He disbanded on day 2 of the administration an aviation safety committee within DHS, and the reason for disbanding it is we want to focus on national security. What air safety isn't national security? He has got an OMB director who was pushing a hiring freeze and federal funding pauses, saying, I want to traumatize the federal workforce when we already have too few air traffic controllers. This president is starting off just within a week and a half an anti-safety agenda that is going to hurt our air safety, and he desperately did not want to be asked about that. I think that's why he went the race baiting route, because he realized, wow, we just sacked the FAA administrator, we just sacked the Aviation Safety Board. Man, they're going to come after us. We better blame somebody else.
And yet the biggest irony of all of this is that we all know that if this happened on Joe Biden or any Democrats' watch, right-wing media and the GOP more broadly would have wasted zero time in blaming it on the left. It would have been nonstop coverage about how this hasn't happened in years, it's incompetence, someone should be fired, agency heads should resign, the president should be impeached, let's hold hearings ad nauseum. And yet, now that Trump is in office, guess how many Republicans are taking that posture? Literally none. In fact, right-wing media is dutifully falling in line behind Trump, also blaming DEI, because now that the GOP runs the government, they need some nebulous boogeyman to blame all of their problems on, because after all, nothing is ever Trump's fault.
Is there any reason to believe there was any foul play here?
Well, at this time, you hate to jump to any conclusions. Obviously, we'll look at everything, check all the boxes. I had just taken off from D.C. Before the crash, and of course, it came across my cell phone, and I saw it and was horrified. So prayers go out to all those impacted. But, to your point, I think you have to look at this with eyes wide open, see what happened. Human error, was it some sort of equipment failure? Did DEI play a role in this type of thing? So I think you look at it, you go into it with, again, eyes wide open and make sure that something like this never happens. It's been a number of years since we've had an aircraft collision such as this. And so, again, prayers for all those impacted.
Absolutely.
Meaning the marching orders have gone out. Right-wing media will carry Trump through yet another crisis, shielding him from accountability, because only Democrats are ever accountable for failures, even when they literally control nothing in the federal government. That's how it goes with today's GOP. All the credit, none of the blame. Trump took office on this pretense that he was going to be a strong leader, but the dysfunction is already creating chinks in the armor, already putting their weakness on full display, and we're only a week in. Before you go, just a quick note, if you'd like to see more of my content, which is always free of advertising, sponsorships, and paywalls, please make sure to subscribe to this channel using the subscribe button right here on the screen. And if you'd like to support my work even further, you can grab a copy of my instant #1 New York Times selling book, Shameless, available for sale right now. That link is also on the screen. Thanks so much for watching.